My grandmother died. She was 100. That's about 30 years longer than I expect to live on account of my Dionysian lifestyle and the fact that I'm a tall and stout man. Everything that I read is telling me I'm not a, quote, super ager. I could try to drink green tea every day, and I do, and eat a ton of veggies and lean proteins, also something I do. But the cage my body was born into wasn't one that was meant to last long. I'm in my 40s, and I hope to get 30 more years out of this powerhouse of a body, and I can only hope that my mind will keep up with it till the end. When I was young, I feared nothing more than death. You know, that obvious self-centered nature of youth, as if the idea of the world existing without you is somehow tragic. And I don't mean to belittle death here. In some cases it's tragic, and in some cases it's painful. Sometimes, more than anything else, it's just sad. But it's that last one that I think people in their youth cling to. That their life, were it to end, would be sad. And there are few things more terrifying than sadness to the self-centered, and few things more intrusive than terror. As one gains wisdom, there are few things more wrenching than watching a self-centered person struggle with and be terrified by the inevitable. Not because it's sad, but because it's wasteful. My grandfather, the one who was married to my grandmother, who just passed, died 15 or so years ago. He was a tall, sturdy son of a bitch. I inherited his long farmer's face, which looks goofy melded with my father's more sprightly mug. He had either 3 heart attacks and a stroke, or 3 strokes and a heart attack, I can never remember which, but none of them got him. What got him was pneumonia, contracted during hip surgery that was necessary from a fall. I wasn't around my grandmother, and I've not been around any other human when they died. But I was around my grandpa when, or at least soon before, he passed. Intubated and gasping for air, he was on his side, fidgeting and rolling around in desperation. His eyes were wild. I couldn't say anything. I remember I was very young and we'd visit their farm. He'd take me out to the tractor and I kept hitting the button to lower the front shovel and he kept hitting it up to bring it back up again. I think he was annoyed and and he probably didn't find it cute, but there was no anger. And he kept bringing me out there too. I remember loving it. I wanted to tell him all this at the hospital bedside, but I couldn't. I was acutely aware of what was going on, and I wanted to be away from it, wanted nothing to do with it. He died a few hours after I left, surrounded by his big family, minus the boy who was named after him. My experiences with death pale in comparison to most. I don't want to take up this entire piece musing on the bullshit that matters only to me. My grandmother was 100 when she died, and for the last decade or more of her life, she was a shell. I have very few memories of her in general, more like something indistinct, nice, comforting, and images of the various places they lived. The farm, the retirement ranch-style bungalow built into the craggy blasted artifice of the Canadian Shield, the suburban home on the mountain in Hamilton. I remember hints and whispers of conversations and a deep love of the Toronto Blue Jays and puzzles. I remember felted Chesterfields, lamps that lit the room like a dying flashlight. I remember dangling beads, buttoned pillows tied to the spokes of dining chairs. I don't remember any IKEA. I remember solid construction and real wood. I remember huge dinners eaten before the sun went down, undersalted, underspiced, overcooked piles of meat and starch dripping with fats and liquids of unknown composition. I remember these, quote, brown meals as something uniquely nourishing. I remember the basement of the place they retired to after selling their farm. The house, as mentioned, was hewn into the Canadian Shield, off a little used two-lane highway across from a river, and in the shadow of what I can only describe as the edge of a massive quarry or some sort of extractive operation. Their basement was cold, and the air took on a sort of magical quality, something thicker, more still. It was furnished. I remember the ground as if thick plastic stick tiles were placed directly on bedrock, ground smooth. There were rugs and an old wood stove, old Chesterfields with gaudy fabric, some chairs of the same make, and a part near the back that for some reason I retain no memory of. I do, however, remember the old TV and the tall rolling stand, the kind 90s kids like me will know from the days in school when their teachers gave up and put on a movie to shut them up for 90 minutes or so. It was on this TV, and while I was sitting in one of the many gaudy felted chairs where I first learned how to, quote, beat a video game. You see, I was born in the 1980s, and I played my share of video games then. Commodore 64, I remember. My dad was into that one, and I remember the shoebox full of old floppy disks full of games. And yes, I mean the actual floppy disks, not the smaller hard ones that people still called floppies in the 90s. I also remember the Nintendo and having a hell of a time playing Mario 1, Mario 3, and Duck Hunt. I know I must have had more games, but those are the only three I remember. I have a distinct memory of learning the incredibly esoteric level skips in Mario 3. Seriously, I honestly can't believe the power of schoolyard talk that so many millions of people actually learned this and passed it on in a time before the internet. It shows that maybe we don't need the internet. Even though I have seemingly always had a passing interest in video games, I can't say that in the 80s I ever beat any. I was too young and stupid to do so. I was not particularly good at them, and well, I really can't stress the stupid part enough. I have this strong sense of grasping around in the dark in both video games and especially real life from my childhood. It took me a long time to get how to act, to understand social norms, to really see beyond myself. Or perhaps it took me this long to learn masking best practices. There are some times when I think I took a long time to be sentient, longer than most kids. I hesitate to say this, but it was almost certainly due to autism spectrum qualities. To cope with being different, I turned inward a lot. I was a kid who played in the mud one day with friends and liked it so much that he kept going back to the same mud pit in the shoddy school soccer field to play the next day by myself when the rest of the kids found something better to do. I was the kid who stopped everyone to announce to the class as we came in from recess that I knew this song. I knew the song that was playing on the little clock radio the teacher had on. I knew it. Everyone, I know this song. Both the teacher and the classmates looked on weary as the shy boy who barely talked was covered in mud and couldn't stop announcing to the entire class that he knew the very popular song that was playing on the radio. I just didn't get things easy as a kid. To be honest, while I had fun with video games, I can't say that I ever got them either. Passing interest is how I'd best describe it. Like I was climbing a hill of Sisyphusian height and couldn't feel the hints and was teased with the promise, but was seemingly never able to crest. The way an incredible idea can feel so real and cogent while you're high, but flit away never to return a second later. If I'm honest, this metaphor can describe much of my life. But every so often, I have crested that hill, and all I needed was something to spark my interest and understanding. something that would focus my mind and turn games from a passing interest to an active, for lack of a better word, obsession. For me, that spark came from passing my little sister one day while she was playing a certain game. And in this case, I was in my childhood home's pantry, full of craft dinner and cans of beans. I have a strong memory of hanging out in this rarely used, messy storage room. Often. I was small and walking out of it one day when I saw her playing Shining Force 2. My whole life might have turned out differently had I walked by at another time. Say when the characters were walking around on the map, that classic top-down perspective. But no. On this day, I walked out and saw one of the gloriously animated battle scenes. "What are you playing?" I asked, the desperation in my voice likely audible, but totally ignored by my spacey sibling. She answered, and I sat down and watched her muddle through some gameplay for a few minutes. The rest is a blur, but I have this moment seared in my memory of her sitting on our poop-brown broadloom carpeting, staring blank-eyed up at our old fuzzy CRT on our even older piss-yellow veneer particle board TV console. I remember it was Chester, the Sontar Knight, charging at what appeared to be a white wisp with angry eyes and a wild mouth. Chester charged at the wisp, it flickered and flashed while the impact sound filled my ears and the horizontal fade spread the pixels into nothingness. I don't know what I said or how long it took me to bully her off the game, but I was hooked. It wasn't until this moment that I truly loved video games, and I'm not too proud to admit that the graphical presentation had a lot to do with it. Before this, I considered RPGs as games with crappy graphics that cool kids don't play. And I was right, RPGs were not then and are not now for, quote, cool kids. What I was wrong about was my opinion of cool kids, because you see, cool kids suck. They generally are the ones who peak in high school, a fate worse than death, and live small lives by the book or large lives trying to fill an endless hole. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not making a value judgment here about whether one should want to be a cool kid or not. I'm merely trying to relay how happy I am that at such a young age, I would have been around 10 or 11, I learned that when you let your life be dictated by the trends or whims of your peers, you cut yourself off from the beauty beyond. You live a smaller life and risk never cultivating your own voice. It is true, sometimes you need to let the field rot to ensure a bountiful harvest the following year. The same could be said about cultural homogenization and human relationships. While I was hooked the moment I saw the game, Shining Force 2 confounded the hell out of me for months, maybe even a year. I had never played anything like this before, and its open world was intimidating as hell for me. I know most of you watching think the open world as something that is more recent, with towers that you climb, which give you map marker objectives once you reach the top. Someone needs more elf root and can't walk 15 feet to pick from the elf root garden. A child is missing at a river, and rather than looking for them, a mother is endlessly pacing around hoping a wandering hero will come and walk 50 feet down the road to save the child from drowners. As fun as that was to write, and as much as I've made a point of jumping into the overcrowded pools on this channel, I'm not here to debate the modern state of open world games. That's another video. What I am here to do is extol the virtues of abstraction and how the act of holding back can actually increase immersion and buy-in. As you can see, Shining Force 2's overworld isn't impressive. But look what happens when you get into a fight. See the detail put into the background, the amazing sprite work of the characters. The difference is jarring, and a switch flips in your head until the spark I mentioned ignites and you start imagining the world in its abstracted form, as the world hinted at in its more fleshed out form. The idea first clicked with me in Shining Force 2, and I could feel my mind racing as it rendered the abstracted scenery in glorious, Dolby Atmos 8K OLED HDR for an audience of one. One who didn't even really see it, but felt it. I felt like Shining Force 2 was an entire game where no one goes, because I was the only one seeing it the way I did. Shining Force 2 also happens to be the game where I first realized that there were treasures where no one goes. From the very start, you can read books on almost every shelf, gulp, quote, soapy water that, quote, tastes disgusting from a washing bin outside your home, and sometimes just find entire secret characters by taking the road less traveled. In a big way, this game primed me for what came later in Phantasy Star 4, which I've already made a video about and you should all go watch. Throughout the game, there are just tons of little tiny secrets that you aren't even given any hints about that just happen to be there. I remember particularly very early in the game, you're thrown in jail at some point and you're making your escape, and the game clearly is telling you to go down to get out. But if you go up and just hit the interact button with a random piece of the cave you're in, you get something called mithril. And at the start of the game, you're like, oh, cool, mithril, you know, that's probably powerful. But it's not going to be for tens of hours, or even, you know, in my case, when I was a kid, hundreds of hours before you get to the point where you can even use the mithril, or you even have any idea what it's for. You just have to hold on to it and, you know, assume that it will pay off in the end. And I don't want to belabor the point here, but the game is chock full of these moments, these situations where you need to think outside of the box, and sometimes just, you know, on an entirely different planet in order to understand that there are secrets, and there are secrets everywhere. And that means you need to explore everywhere. It's just, it's brilliant. It's a brilliant, brilliant game. Before I was able to see all the glorious treasures that were to come, I needed to learn how to beat a video game. I was still only semi-sentient at this point, and I was essentially butting my head up against a wall over and over and over again as I fumbled through what today I realize is a painfully simple game. But when I was a kid, it was an impossible ask. The first few fights against what I learned later were named Gizmo were okay. Even the next few with bats and monsters were surmountable. But there comes a point when the entire world state of the game is about to change, and I just could not beat it. In what I was sure at the time was the game's final battle, your crew of child warriors fight their way through the recently opened mystical tower that stood ominously behind your childhood kingdom. In the end, you're faced with the recently possessed King of Galum, who had until days prior been an ally, as he tries to resurrect Xeon, the king of the devils. You interrupt him in the act, and he summons a bunch of gizmos, but there is at least one of them that is a different shade of white. It's here that I learned of what is a tried and true video game trope of palette swapping. The new gizmos were a complete wall. They were a skill check. They were a Taurus demon from Dark Souls. They were the Erdtree Sentinel from Elden Ring. They were the desert level from Mario 3. Or is that just me? I haven't seriously played that game since the 80s, and I remember only getting to the big land once. The list goes on. Looking back, it's an easy fight, but as a child banging my head against the wall over and over again, hoping for a different outcome, it was insurmountable. Or at least it was, until one special day in my grandmother's basement. I was getting to the age where I needed an activity when we were dragged to family gatherings. These events usually lasted a full day, if not several, and I was bored of exploring the outside. Thinking back, this is crazy because that was a damn cool area to go exploring. My parents let me bring my fantastically portable Sega Genesis to my grandparents' retirement ranch, and I was allowed to hang in the basement as much as I liked. And here is one of the only real memories I hold of my grandmother. She came down on a few occasions to check on me, bringing me a snack, something like that. It was nice. And I remember she had a world-weary furrow in her brow, already hunched and tired of life. "You can come upstairs and talk with us whenever you like. Can't be playing that contraption all day now." It was a nice suggestion, but I didn't take it. Instead, in that cold room, nestled in a well of air that rarely moved, I learned how to beat a video game. You've heard many people talk about flow states and how you achieve clarity without distraction on certain tasks and certain situations. I feel like for me, it's not just tasks. Sometimes it's an entire mindset that you're able to fully comprehend and fully execute. There was something about this place and this time and this air and this easy access to snacks. I was able to finally, after years playing video games, actually crack them open. You see, the only way to beat a video game is to play by its rules and then learn how to break them. That's it. No video game is hard, and they are all designed to be beaten. Quote, "Dark Souls finds your weakness," they say over at Watch Out for Fireballs. But I would argue that instead it just subverts your expectations and finds things you haven't learned before. For me, something happened in that basement with the rarefied air. I started to realize that if I didn't rush in, if I crept closer, kited the enemy and drew their aggro, I could safely plink them off one by one. It's a small shift, but imagine an idiot child who knew nothing about patience and generally played games that were always more about attacking than defending. The best a game can do is subvert your expectations and surprise you. I'm reminded of something Gary Butterfield said on Watch Out for Fireballs, a podcast that I've been shilling for in every one of my videos so far. It's about the modern state of gift giving. In today's world where you can buy anything you can imagine in any moment on the supercomputer that is in your pocket, the best gifts are the ones people didn't know they wanted. Like the moment I walked out and saw my little sister playing Shining Force 2, this moment in my grandmother's basement was a gift I had no way to fathom. Taking my time, I fought my way through the dark clouds or gizmos or whatever they were called and beat them back into oblivion. I remember buzzing as I beat the last one. I remember thinking that I won the game. But no, not even close. Like a flower in spring after a big, heavy rain, the game opens up. In the end, we all know the name of this channel, Where No One Goes. And the reason Shining Force 2 gets such VIP treatment here is because, while it did not literally prompt the idea for this channel, Chrono Trigger and Phantasy Star 4 own that. It set the stage and primed the pump to create the needed curiosity in my little boy brain more than 30 years ago. Trapped under what seemed like a Saturday morning cartoon with its brilliant color palette and cutesy character portraits is a game of surprising depth and inscrutable secrets. The fake-out final boss we all just experienced is just one of the times the game pushes you to the edge of what you think it has to offer, only to vastly expand in scope. This trope deserves its own video, which is incoming, but kudos to Shining Force 2 for being the first thing I personally ever experienced that builds a world and only lightly hints that it might be bigger than what you see. When you beat the Dark Cloud, suddenly catastrophe hits and an immense earthquake starts ravaging your home village of Grand Seal. When exploring early on in the game, you make your way to the docks, you hear the NPCs say that the fishermen are all out nabbing their morning catch. And now you race through the town as literal chasms are opening up all around you. You hear the sage Astral urge you to run to the docks. To my little boy brain in my grandmother's basement, I was beside myself with panic. I thought I had just won the game and now everything I was working to save was being destroyed around me. In my panic, I remember thinking, oh my god, this entire town is destroyed and I cannot go back here. It's one of the first times I experienced another video game trope of a point of no return. And I'm sad to say that I didn't know this point of no return was coming, and on my very first playthrough of Shining Force 2, I did actually leave Kiwi to die. Yes, the cute little tortoise who is freaking awesome and I love him, but yep, my first one, I didn't know that he was even a character. Early on in the game, you get a scene where two beastmen and a little cute turtle are being sold by poachers. This has not aged well, considering the fact that these creatures are all equal to humans in terms of sentience. They were not popular, however, so they were left in their cages unsold. Thankfully, in the events of the game, the cages were broken and they all escaped. The turtle, Kiwi, being a small turtle man, didn't run to the hills but instead hid in the corner of a nearby house. If you don't find Kiwi on your way to fighting that big battle that I was just talking about with the Dark Cloud, he will die. And as I mentioned, this is a point of no return. I gotta say, the balls of the developers to allow this character to be entirely missable is something that modern games outside of From Software, to a fault actually, will refuse to do. Rightfully, devs want the player to see all the cool shit that they develop. I get it. I just don't respect it. Kiwi is an interesting character too. Just look at the way he attacks enemies. And beyond this, he seems really weak and you need to put a lot of effort into him to make him good, but he also beats every character in most of the game in defense. He is a turtle after all. This is another point for Shining Force 2 for this channel. Effort pays off. It's very easy to play the game relying heavily or even solely on your main character and Peter. Peter is a phoenix. Peter is a powerhouse. He can fly, he has the highest attack in the game, and one of the highest speeds too. If you're a preteen and don't understand video games all that well, I guarantee you most certainly killed Xeon many hours from now, mainly with Peter when you first played. When I replay Shining Force 2, I always try new approaches and ways of playing that I never would have even thought of in my early playthroughs of the game. And it delivers. I'd like to point viewers to Walls of Jericho and his amazing video on the Shining Force 2 tier list. It is a great watch. Please go watch it right now, and then come back and finish this video as well, obviously. It's very interesting because it shows how some characters that seem weak at first can turn into some of the most powerful characters in the game. Two particularly stand out for this channel's purposes. The two in question are Sarah, who starts out as a priest, and in most early playthroughs, especially if you're a young kid who doesn't know how to play video games, becomes the first person you usually relegate to the caravan. However, with a little bit of work, she is essentially the best and most powerful character in the game by the end. The second is Slade the Thief. The thing with him is, he starts out very unimpressive, and he turns out to be one of the most impressive characters by the end, including being the sole person able to wield the best sword in the game. I'm not going to go into too much detail on these two because honestly, if you just go to Walls of Jericho and watch his tier list video, I think I would be repeating some of the work that he's already done to kind of explain why these characters are the best. So please, finish this video, then go watch that. And those are just two that I wanted to mention. There's even more that are really cool, like the Birdman Screech, whom you can miss entirely, just like Kiwi. If you don't walk in a very specific tile and catch him as he jumps out of his nest to try to fly for the first time, you will miss him. Presumably he jumps to his death. If you don't happen to literally explore every single tile in the game, a character will die. That is Shining Force 2. It's remarkable. While characters like Slade, Sarah, and Kiwi offer the most obvious payoffs, it's really the gestalt of the experience that makes Shining Force 2 so special. The experience I've had with this wonderful game over the years is truly a treasure that cannot be stolen, and why I've chosen it to occupy one of the top spots in this channel's pantheon. Now, I've skipped over a lot of this actual game, and I am sort of regretting it, Talking about Shining Force 2 in this script has made me wish I was taking more of a Noah Gervais approach to this channel, or even a similar approach to my Phantasy Star 4 video, Alone But Seen. The ultimate where no one goes moments in this game come near the end, and somehow encompass the entire world. You see, this game starts on an island, one that you can only explore a small part of. As I've outlined, portions of the island become uninhabitable after the earthquake and you abscond to the main continent. While there, you explore the full southern half of its expanse, and then later the northern half. Then you fly on an airplane that was disguised as a geoglyph that looks like one of the famous Nazca lines. The ship takes you back to the island and is promptly shot down in the process, and you are officially locked out of the new home that you made for yourself on the continent. Or, if I just explore a little, underpinning this entire world is a sort of nether realm that will allow you to get back to where you came from. The mere existence of this nether realm warms my heart, similar to the way I enjoyed as a kid being in the pantry or looking at a very busy and cluttered closet. There is some sort of cozy feeling I get from all these disparate experiences, and that cozy feeling is why I started this channel. That this world was hidden underneath me all the time meant so much to me as a kid. It's a feeling that games are even better at nowadays. That idea that there is always something lower, such as in Shadow of the Erd Tree, or that there is always something higher, such as Tears of the Kingdom. The idea that there is this vast infrastructure that's beyond our ken is somehow comforting and beautiful to me. I would like to point out that the much maligned Mass Effect Andromeda does this to glorious effect. Beyond the items and characters that require blood-borne levels of insight to puzzle out, it's the nigh unexplained realm that really brought the room together for me in this game. I think back on my grandmother coming down to check on me that time I spent all day at one of our visits beating these dark clouds in Shining Force 2. A feat I assumed was the end of the game, but turned out to be just the first 10% or so. It was at this time I saw that this game had more to offer, that there was always something higher, lower, or beyond that I could rely on. And what strikes me about that moment in my grandmother's basement was the tone of what she said to me, actually. You can come upstairs and talk to us whenever you like. Can't be playing that contraption all day now. It was a suggestion, not an order. A suggestion that there might be more to life than what I was doing. A suggestion that I, too, could go deeper, go higher, at any point if I liked. It was a strong suggestion, and while at the moment I didn't take it, when I finally beat those dark clouds and my party fled on the waves, I found a save spot and I turned off the game because there was much to explore and do. I'd gone deep into the game and now it was time to go explore upstairs, have a hearty brown meal and chat with my elders who years down the road would die, and whom I'd follow on that journey when the time comes. I think that's how I'll remember my grandma. A steadfast lookout. A kind heart, but one who always let you decide your life. The thought makes me smile. Thank you for watching. The fact that I didn't get to talk about Lemon the Red Baron in this video is a shame. So I'm going to treat you all to some B-roll of my dog, Lemon, in the outro. Until next time, let's go where no one goes. Together. In case it's not obvious, this one was close to my heart. I wrote this script just after my grandmother died. It got me thinking about my own mortality. I guess more importantly, for this channel anyway, it got me remembering some of the nice moments that I shared with her back in the day. Back in that basement. It was very interesting to think back on that myself. I kind of want to go and visit that house again and ask the current owners if I could go in their basement. But that's not going to happen. This is a special game, to me. This is going to be the first video that I share with any of my family. And the only person in my family I'm going to share that with is my little sister, who, as you know, played a big part in this entire saga. I just want to thank everyone for actually, if you're still here, sticking with me. I really like doing this. I hope that you like it too. And I am going to continue to make unique videos going forward. So, please like and subscribe and share and all that stuff. Comment if you'd like. I'd love to talk to you. Here I would like to thank the people whom I mention in this video again. That would be, for a third time in a row, the Watch Out for Fireballs podcast. They are great. Go and, subscribe to them. Give them money on Patreon. You could give me money on Patreon too if you want, but I don't know. I'm not nearly as prolific or important as they are. So check them out. They're good. Also, Walls of Jericho, very, very cool Shining Force 2 and Shining Force in general content creator here on YouTube. I very much enjoy his stuff, so good on you, man. I hope that maybe you have a look at mine and see if you like it too, And of course, I want to thank the amazing Noah Gervais. You're an absolute inspiration and one of the best people I've ever had the pleasure of listening to for 7 to 8 hours at a time on your amazing, amazing full series retrospectives. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and until next time, let's explore where no one goes together.